What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of Why Black Men Teach. I'm your boy, your host, Dr. Rashad Anderson. And I really must say that this episode I'm really happy about because I have a guest that has a truly inspiring story. He's been a part of Denver Public Schools ever since he was 4 years old as a student. But most importantly, his story from custodian all the way to the principalship has captivated the minds and hearts of audiences all across the country. He really is, in my opinion, a game changer and definitely an inspiration. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, Brother Michael Atkins, thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You stay fresh up all the time that I see you, always.
Well, I appreciate that, When I share space with you, I know I better come with it. I better be that game changer
Oh, man.
on the inside and on the outside.
I appreciate that. So tell me, how life treating you?
I'm well. I'm uncomfortable, and I think we all should be until we figure out how to serve all our babies at a equally trajectory, and make sure that we are opening up the doors of opportunities, not just for some, but for all.
I love that because in your role now at DPS, you are the director of its Black Student Success?
Correct.
Okay, so could you explain what exactly is that initiative and the program and your role?
Absolutely. It's when we know better, we should do better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that at heart, it's really focusing on what are the systems that we can create that can better serve our Black students within our classrooms better. What is the capacity that we need to build of our principals, our leadership, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our community to be able to make sure we manifest that trajectory for Black students in a very powerful way.
I love that. So since you've been in that role, what have you found, just a kind of an overview or just like some best practices and tips for making sure that Black students succeed, especially in a place like Denver, Colorado, where we're so few, and if you think about the Black teachers and Black males specifically, even fewer than that. So what have you kind of found that's been most helpful in making sure Black students succeed?
That we make this term culturally responsive more convoluted than we need to.
Mm-hmm.
We make relationship building more difficult than it needs to. The key is to shift from compliance to service. Right? And when we say that, we cannot ask some children to come in and just comply to education within its current context, right? We have to make sure that when I see you, I know who you are, and therefore I know your strengths and weaknesses, and therefore I am intentionally planning to make sure you hit the mark. So yes, we need representation with books and all these things, but from the adult perspective, we got to make sure that we know our babies when they walk in the door, and we have to make sure that we are serving them at their best entry point.
Yeah, because when you say that, that makes me think about the power of relationships. That's something like with my guys that are in the Call Me Mr. program from the freshman year that they get in, they're always in schools, and I drill that the power of relationships will be transformational to your kids. And I think we have to highlight that more and more, that when you build a powerful relationship with these students, they will meet your expectations each and every time. Yeah, so I want to talk about your journey, because I know you've had a long journey and had many hats in the education field, but I want to go like way back, way back. Have you always wanted to be a teacher? And if not, what changed for you to influence you?
So growing up, my mom was the administrator for the VA hospital. And until I was in 4th grade, and she transitioned and opened up a home daycare center. And just to watch Mom within the confinements of motherhood, which she was just phenomenal, but then service children in the community in such a nurturing, a nurturing way, really like inspired me to lean into those attributes it takes to serve. I didn't want to be a teacher at that time, though. I think what changed for me is my transition from elementary school to middle school. I can remember being in 6th grade and being bused from my Park Hill community 35 minutes south to Hamilton Middle School. And this busing dynamic was based around this equality case from Keys versus Denver, District 1. It's the first desegregation case outside the South, and the first desegregation of schools case that was in collaboration with Latina and Black families. And the whole purpose of the case was equality, right? We want our babies in this community to have similar resources, to have qualified teachers, and the outcome of that was busing, right? So I was bused out of my community and for middle school. Back to 6th grade, I remember getting off the bus. I'm new to the school. It's a rainy fall day. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And we got off the bus, we stand in line, and we start to transition into the school. And I remember walking past my gym teacher as she was talking to one of her colleagues. And she said, "Here comes the bus kids." And when she said that, I didn't think anything of it. She was so matter of fact. I was like, "Yep, we just arrived. 35-minute trek from our community here for a more equitable educational experience." But I would grow to learn that Here Comes the Bus Kids had a whole different context. Here Comes the Bus Kids was about us complying, and if we didn't, we were punitively punished, right? I grew to hate school in middle school. I pushed back on systems. I didn't really want to comply. I didn't see myself as a scholar or a learner in that space. And the crazy thing about it is that moment of hate in my life fostered into a moment of me wanting to change, right? How can I use my experience to really change and impact the system? Mm-hmm. So that's when I started to truly think into high school years how I wanted to become an educator and use those attributes that of service that I saw my mom do on a daily basis with community, children, and families in a powerful way.
That's a powerful story. It resonates a lot to me because of my background, having come from the South, and my father, who was really active in civil rights progression with the Black church. And I didn't know that Denver had situations like that. I think that when we think about desegregation, we mostly think that that was in the South. So you just brought my perspectives here. What was that experience like, if you can just kind of go into depth, after being bused into a neighborhood where I imagine you didn't see many people that looked like you? Could you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like as a young Black boy in an environment where you see very little people that look like you?
Yeah, it was a culture shock for me, mm-hmm. right? Because at the time, my community of Park Hill was set up in a very cultural dynamic, right? We had our own grocery stores and we had our own corner stores, and we didn't need much out of the community, right?
Yeah.
So being bused without the security of your family and your mother and the individuals that you trust into a place that you're having a culture shock, right? And that you really don't relate to. And the only thing you're learning is like these individuals are telling you what to do, when to do it, in a way that doesn't always feel good. Right?
Yeah.
So for me, getting up in the morning was hard. It was difficult, right? And my mom always came from a perspective of you go to school, you get an education, and you do your best. And my grandma would always say, you never miss out on an opportunity to show people what you know, right? And in that bubble that they didn't know about, I was struggling. I was struggling with relationships, with the adults, with the teachers. I had very little allyship there. The school, although the case was around desegregation, we were segregated within the school. All of our, the Latinx students who were bused in from the west side, they were all on the east wing of the second floor. All the black students were on the west wing of the second floor. And then you had all of your AP classes on the first floor that was filled with all the neighborhood white kids, right? And, you know, as I could remember oftentimes feeling aggressive in those spaces. My first instinct was to like fight or flight often, because it just wasn't a safe space for me. And it definitely wasn't a space where I could be my true self and learn from an academic perspective, right? I felt like I was always, I was a gazelle grazing in the grass and I'm looking for the lion, right? So I did things like I would walk in the front door and I would walk right out the back door of that school. Me and two of my friends, and go and create our own safe spaces, right? And I just didn't feel like I was serviced or seen, or it was a place for me.
So I can imagine that definitely that whole experience of being in school and having lack of representation and anger for most people, especially young black men, they would run away from the classroom because of the turbulent experience that they had when they was in K-12. But for you, you felt compelled to do something about it. And that's what I really love, because that's the part of that calling. I always say that I think that teaching is a calling akin to how a preacher is called to the classroom. And so there obviously was a gravitational pull, a calling to the classroom for you. When other people would have used that experience and ran away from it, it compelled you to do something about it. Your story is known all over. I mean, literally, if you type in Michael Atkins in Google, you will see CNN all over. For the people that don't know your story yet, can you talk to us? We see the headline from custodian to principal, and that boggles the mind because you rarely ever see or hear anything about that. Walk us through that journey of how did that happen? Because I feel like this is going to be a real good moment here. So I'm really interested to hear.
Yeah, you know, as kids, we don't have a lot of space of agency, and as adults, we do, right? And I wanted to make sure I use that space of agency to get into that door, to make sure that I can promote the change and feed the fire that grew in me that day in 6th grade, right? So when I graduated high school, I enrolled in college right here at CCD, and was pursuing a minor in behavioral science and a major in business at the time. So I wanted to seek out positions. I'm 19 years old. I need a job. I need to start building towards that goal of becoming a teacher. What better internship do you have than an opportunity to go be a paraprofessional or a teacher's aide? Really get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Really start to build your capacity in that manner. And I would go into schools, find postings and go to schools to fill out the application and apply for paraprofessional positions. And principals would look me up and down like I was crazy, right? And I didn't get any success. And I was offered by one of the schools a custodian position. And at the time, I don't have any money. I'm a young college student trying to pursue my dreams and try to build my future. So I took the position. And what I learned really quick within the custodial position is that that's still opportunities to influence and build capacity. So I built phenomenal relationships with, I was at Smiley Middle School, which is now McAuliffe, which used to be a predominantly black middle school. And I fostered so many relationships with the students there. And I knew that wasn't my end goal.
Yeah.
So I was at Smiley for probably about 9 months, again, as I'm going to school here on campus, and was transferred to Rachel B. Knoll. I opened Rachel B. Knoll as a custodian. And spent about a year at Rachel B. Knoll as a full-time custodian there. Then I was transferred again as an assistant facility manager. It was a promotion to Lowry Elementary. And when I walk into Lowry Elementary, I'm getting a tour of the school. And part of that tour is meeting the principal. And I walk into the principal office, and lo and behold, it was my 2nd grade teacher who was the principal at the time. A teacher that I had a phenomenal relationship with, who knew my mom, my other 2 brothers. She had my other 2 brothers as students. And we just automatically embraced, and she asked me, "What are you doing here? How's your mom?" And asked me all those relational capacity questions just to catch up. And I told her I was initially seeking a paraprofessional position, but was offered a custodial position. And she didn't say anything. She just inquired, "We're so happy to have you here." And 2 months later, she pulled me in her office and she asked me if I still wanted that paraprofessional position. And I asked her, what are you talking about? You know, she said, "We had a conversation, and this is, I know you want to be a teacher. Do you want this reading and writing paraprofessional position?" I jumped at the opportunity. And as I reflect on those moments, right, often, my grandma always used to say, sometimes when you have that dream and you knock on that front door or even try the handle, it's locked, right? And maybe you even go in the back and you go to the basement window and see if you can enter that way, and it's locked. But you see feet in the basement window, and maybe you recognize those feet, and maybe that person inside unlocks the latch for you. And that's what my second grade teacher did for me at 20 years old, right? It was a relationship that I was able to build, and someone who saw me in second grade that unlocked that latch for me, right? So that was my entry point into education. So I was a reading and writing paraprofessional at Lowry Elementary. And I also had this realization really early, is like, what skills do I have to be a reading and writing paraprofessional at Lowry Elementary? And the team around there built my capacity, and really, that's where I really, really fell in love with those aha moments that children get when you're teaching them how to read and write, right? And not only the aha moments that you see in them, but the hair on your arms that it gives you. And I wanted that for a career, right? I wanted to walk around with static, right? With my hair, with the hair on my arms standing up. So I shifted my major in that moment from business to elementary education, and transferred to Metro and received my teaching certificate.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my intro into education, and then here I am. I'm a teacher. For many years in the classroom, I taught second and third grade. Some of the greatest moments I've ever had, and constantly walking around with that static. And another one of my mentors, Dr. Pat Hudietta, who was my principal at the time, said, you need to go and do this at a greater level. You need to be in school administration.
Wow.
And with that advice, I became a Ritchie intern and got my master's in K-12 education, and got my principal license, and then I was the principal at Stedman Elementary, 3 blocks from the house that I grew up in.
That's amazing.
On the same basketball courts and playgrounds that, I played with my older brother and some of my closest friends.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. A big part of my background is my faith, and it reminds me of something that I've learned throughout my journey, and it's something that I share with young men that I mentor, and it is when you honor what you have in the current moment and you give it your very best, that's when God will bless your territory in order to increase, so that you'll be able to move on and do it for even larger audiences. And it sounds like, because you walked into that position as a custodian with your head held high, because many people would have turned it down, but you were effective at it. You built the relationship, and every single position that you went into in education, you were effective. And because you were effective, it led you all the way up to the principalship. That's powerful. And so I commend you. I think that story is one that a lot of young Black men, or even just anybody, just when they hear it, just the power of, whenever you at a level of humility and being effective of where you are. And thinking it back to your moments and times when you was a teacher, what do you find has been some of the most important lessons you have learned when you were teaching elementary school?
Give children that same space of agency that we do as adults. allow the children to create the space and the environment, and you adapt to it as the adult. We often, again, back to the space of school being a space of compliance for children, is the mindset that we really need to eliminate in education. Even now, within the, just looking at where we are as a country, we can learn so much from our youth. We don't want them to, my whole mindset as a teacher is I don't want my students to have the same experience as me. So what do I need to do as the adult to be a forward thinker, to be able to provide them those different opportunities that I wasn't provided? And my answer as a teacher was like, spaces of agency. I'm gonna give you all choice. I'm gonna make sure I meet your needs, and more than anything, I'm gonna make learning fun, right? And I'm gonna see you as human beings, right? I'm not gonna see you as numbers or quantitative data on a paper. I'm gonna see you from a qualitative relationship perspective and lean in to get to know you, your likes, your dislikes, know your families, and from there, you said it earlier, you got a relationship with your babies. They will work hard for you. Yeah. And my students worked hard for me. And I learned so much from them that allowed me to continue to build on my educational career.
Beautiful. When you think about relationships, as you just said, with your students, what do you think it does for the student that does not look like you, who very first interaction with a black man is you? What do you think that does for a student that's so different? What do you think that does when they have a black man as a teacher for the very first time?
It opens them up to the reality of the world that we live in, right? Like schools should mirror the world that we currently live in. All students should have different teachers from different cultural backgrounds, because I truly believe in, as adults, we need to learn from this mindset of intercultural development, right? Like, we live in America. America's full with many different cultures, many different religions, many different languages. And it's my job, it should be my job, to adapt to those different cultural needs. Same as educators, it should be our job to adapt. And when we do that and model it, we're serving all students better, right? A rising tide raises all boats. So, if you think about a white student coming to my classroom and having me, I'm able to do a couple of things in those moments. I'm able to model that intercultural development from a perspective of vulnerability. I'm also able to push against so many stereotypes that we have about the black man in this country. And model that effectively for that particular student, right? Sometimes the only interaction we have with the outside world is through the stories that are being told on TV, right? We are products of our environment. We are products of our current situatedness. So it's always an opportunity to model who we truly are as individuals and people, and push back on a lot of negative stereotypes.
Absolutely. I always say that when we do learn so much about the other from what we see from movies and TV and what we may hear, but it does so much to challenge stereotypes when you literally have somebody that's different from you and you say, hey, we actually are a lot more connected than I thought we were different. And so that's very powerful to me. I want to talk about, in talking about the stereotypes of black men, let's talk about stereotypes of teaching. When a person turns on the TV, they hear so many negative stereotypes about being a teacher. You hear the low pay, and you hear about parents cussing you out. You see videos on Facebook about students fighting their teachers. I mean, there are not a lot of positive stories about teaching. Why should somebody in 2025 still consider going into the teaching field?
The greatest superheroes are in the classroom. And I say that from this I probably won't change the world, me personally, but I can create the generation of students that will, right? When we are in a position of service, which you are as a teacher, and when you walk into that classroom, your students don't do what you see on social media, right?
Yeah.
From that stereotype or that perception. Your students think you truly are a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
Your students will work extremely hard for you. Your students will bend over backwards for you. And your job as a teacher is to help them knit their own capes so they leave you as superheroes, right? So what I would say to anyone who is thinking about getting into the teaching profession, I would ask them if they had a passion for service. Do they have love in their heart? Are they seeking for help develop a better world? Are they in love with their community? Or do they want to be a part of a community? And if you say yes to those things, then you can be a teacher.
I love that. Could you talk about, I love the fact that we talk about we may not can change the world, but we can inspire the next generation to do so. And that's why teachers are nation builders. Has there been an aha moment for you with being a teacher, a paraprofessional, being an assistant principal or a principal, that you realize and something confirmed for you that I am walking in my purpose? I am doing what I was designed to do.
Yeah, at every step of the way. When I was wiping tables in the cafeteria after students ate, and Leslie would seek me out and talk to me about her negative relationship with her teacher and allow me and listen to me to give her some tips, right? And help me develop her to have like difficult conversations as a custodian, right? As a paraprofessional, the kids that just give you their authentic love and give you credit that you don't deserve for who they are currently today. As a teacher, Christian Ramos would stole a big old jar of half-used hot sauce to give to me for my birthday, and is willing to take that risk, right? But wanted to give me something is a aha moment. I have to call his mom and say, "I got your hot sauce up here." You know, as a principal, building the capacity of my teachers who are now serving as principals. Adrian Lopez was my dean, and now she's the principal of Polaris Elementary. Aha moment. And now in my current position, watching schools like Green Valley Ranch exceed at the mid-year mark their end-of-year goal for last year for Black students in early literacy. Aha moment, right? So I am finding like those opportunities to continue to make the hair on my arms stand up because kids are winning, right? And that's what I always go back to little Mike walking these hallways. And knowing that my purpose is to ensure that the babies, the little Mikes that are walking the hallway have a different, not only outcome, but experience. And that experience is the trajectory of their outcome. So, yes, so many aha moments, and continue to learn every single day from our babies, our students, right?
Yeah, you said a word there, trajectory. I was on stage a few weeks ago doing a speech, and I said, a teacher, what other profession can you have a teacher that can say something, one thing to a kid, and it changed the entire trajectory of their life? That's some type of power that I don't know many other professions can talk about. Have you ever had a situation with a student where you saw something you said change the entire trajectory of their life, or maybe someone that you mentored? And I know I kind of threw that on you.
No, but I'm going to flip that in a selfish way and just share a quick story about a student, a second grader, who just graduated from Purdue, the University of Purdue, with her teaching certificate.
Okay.
Atiana Wilson. She's coming home to teach, and I'm trying to find her a placement currently. But I was her second and third grade teacher. I did a loop with her. And she taught me the value of difficult conversations. She taught me the difference between equality and equity. And she, I think, not only from a teaching perspective, helped develop my trajectory in the profession and in life as a human being. And it's something simple, but in reflection, it was so powerful to me. Again, giving the babies the agency, not creating spaces of compliance. I remember taking recess away from some of my second grade students. And I remember that day, Atiana Wilson came to me, wrote a note to me and said, "Can I speak to you at lunch?" A second grader. We're talking about a second grader. Yes. And she so elegantly set me down in second grade and talked to me about the impact it had on her that I took everyone's recess away, equality, and how inequitable it was that everyone was receiving the same punishment, right? And I say that because that was my transition into my own trajectory of I've got to center humanity as an educator, and I have to listen to the babies because if you build a relationship, they'll set you on the trajectory of success, right? So I often say, children come to school the first day and you go into these beautiful classrooms that are created by the teacher. You need to pause that because it's just not the teacher's space, right? Let's make sure that we set up for opportunities for our students to share their truth with the adults, to not only for the adult to set the student on the right trajectory, but for the student to have the agency to set the adult on the right trajectory as well.
I love it. I want to change gears. If I want to talk about blackness, let's talk about blackness in a sense. Every district you look around, you will see that there is a want or some type of initiative to bring more black men in the classroom, which is really challenging right now in the country with the current political climate against diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you see a lot of institutions. You see institutions in higher ed, and you see institutions where districts where they're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to buy along with this anti-DEI spirit, or are they going to stay the course and be committed to their values? What do you say in all of your wisdom to districts and institutions that are on the fence about whether there should be a push or not for more black men into the classroom? What do you want them to know? What should they know about recruiting more black men in the profession?
Yeah, we are in a sensitive, we're in a sensitive space right now, right? This is what I'll say about DEI. I think DEI will work itself out. And this is why I say that. 70% of the U.S. economy is driven by the consumer. We are the consumer. Right?
Yeah.
In 1950, 90% of the consumers were white. Right?
Yeah.
Last year, the consumers brought in $17 trillion or something like that within the U.S. economy, 70% of the U.S. economy. In 2025, that number, the demographic number, has shifted severely. In 2035, it's projected for whites to be the minorities, right? So just think about that. As a consumer, whether we're talking about education, whether we are talking about buying products, the world no longer looks like it did in 1950.
Correct.
This country no longer looks like it did in 1950.
Correct.
Right? So the policies and the structures around product was different. I speak a lot about intercultural development. Companies will have to adapt to the cultural needs of the individuals who live within the country. Yeah. So I think DEI will work itself out because we have currently, from a political perspective, created this narrative that money is power, right? And money is the driver of decision making. Well, the consumer looks different than it did 60 years ago. So therefore, there will have to be some adjustments there. And we have to take that same mindset into the education field, right? The consumer, our babies, don't look like they used to look.
Correct, yeah.
Therefore, the systems and the policies and the structure of education has to shift to adapt to the cultural needs that we are serving, right? So it's not really like, do I want to focus on DEI? It's like, when are you going to if you're not, right? Because your consumers
Correct.
aren't 90% white.
Yeah.
And do we bring more black men into the classroom? It's not if you're going to do that, it's when are you going to do that, right? Because they are going to authentically be able to create spaces for the consumer,
Yeah.
right? Black men are the product within education. Black educators are the product, right? And we need more of the product because we have more consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me with DEI, I think it's just going to work itself. It's going to have to in the current structure of the United States because we relate power and privilege to money often.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. The world does not look like how it used to, and I'm with you that the whole situation with DEI, it will work itself out. If you study anything about civil rights, you see that there's progress that's made in the country, and then there's a period of backlash. But then after the backlash, the progress continues, and I believe we're in a backlash stage right now, but I believe progress will happen. What do you think that we have to do in order to get more black men to come into classrooms?
We have to serve the black students better, right? I think you pointed it out a little bit about my story is, I saw that inequity, I had those horrible experiences, and then I wanted to go and shift the experience of other students who came after me to make sure there wasn't that generational harm, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case in most times, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not serviced well in a space or I'm punitively punished, I'm not going to run back there to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm going to run further away from
Correct.
it, right?
Yep.
So, I think we need to serve black children better in our classrooms within this country.
Yep.
B, I think we need to have more programs like the Call Me Mr. program that really centers on you are okay as you currently are, and that's exactly who I need you to be.
Amen.
Inside of the classroom,
Yep.
right? Because there's safety in that as well, right? C, I think we need to truly look at the way that we have structured and built education, even higher education, to make sure that we are creating, especially in a state like Colorado, that we're creating welcoming spaces.
Yeah.
That same culture shock I had being bused into Southeast Denver out of my community, it's probably similar to the same culture shock anyone from a predominantly black city brings when they come to
You're
Denver,
not lying.
Colorado.
As a guy
right?
from the South, I'm trying to tell you, culture shock was real. I'm still looking for a good soul food spot. I'm trying. Look,
But yeah, we as in Colorado, we as a state need to do just a better job of creating programs where our students could see themselves.
I love it because what you said is so important. I need more people to understand that if you want more black educators to come into the classroom, the most important part of that is not the recruitment fairs or signing bonuses. It's really not that. The best recruitment is having a good experience in school in K-12. That's the best recruitment that you can have. And if our black students were having better experiences in the school building, I believe that we could rebuild that black teacher pipeline. And so I'm with you 1,000%. As we go to close, I want you to think about a young black male that's in high school and they currently don't know what they want to do. And they're on the fence. They have characteristics of being a good teacher, but nobody ever specifically said, this is something that you could do. What do you say to that young black male that's watching this show and on the fence to say, consider teaching?
I say you can be the agent of change that you needed. I say you can be the educator that shifts the world, that shifts this country, that shifts the political climate.
Yeah.
That you have so much power, space, and agency, and there's a dire need for you within our communities. Not only I need you, not only do you need them, not only do our schools need them, but our students need us.
Yeah.
We are so underrepresented in the education sector,
Yeah.
black men, black women as well. But our babies need us. Our babies need us.
That's real.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I think that this has been a really powerful, insightful conversation. Kudos to you and everything that you got going on. I think Denver Public Schools made a brilliant decision by putting you in the position for black student success. There is no one else that I really fervently believe that could do the work that you're doing. And the insight that you bring and the wisdom that you bring to that position, I'm just really excited to see what you do with that. And I'm very confident that our students that are in this area have someone like you that's a champion. So thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you. I'm going to be following you around to see where your next outfit comes from because I'm going to figure it out. I'll figure it out, but I really appreciate you for coming on the show,
Dr.
brother.
Anderson, it's a pleasure, man, and I will. I think we'll be following each other around. The wisdom and the gifts that you are bringing to the city is not overlooked, and I am grateful to follow and lead with someone so passionate and who is walking within their purpose. So continue to walk, my brother.
I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so this has been another powerful episode of Why Black Men Teach. I mean, wow, that was beautiful. We invite you, please click that link below. Make sure you subscribe if you really like the show. Share it to all of your friends, your family. And most importantly, if you know a young black man that's on the fence and don't know what they do, make sure you share this episode because I believe that this episode will truly be transformative as it was transformative for me. So until next time, thank you.